Oh man, this is gonna be a spicy one. Dr. A, why I chose UK over US as an Indian doctor. Let's see what he has to say.
Why would a promising young doctor decide to settle for mediocre NHS salaries instead of going for the big bucks in the US?
Important point there. The reason why the US is so competitive for IMGs and FMGs is because compensation here is #1 in the world.
In this video, we're gonna be diving deep into my journey as an international medical graduate and what made me decide to move to the UK instead of the US. But first, sip of tea, because we're talking about the UK after all.
My guy, tea is better than coffee. Fight me.
Alright, a bit of a story time. Let's do a quick rewind. I'm a proud graduate of Bangalore Medical College in India. Those days were a roller coaster. Think late night study sessions, endless cups of chai and...
Dude, I was just in India with my mom back in January. The masala chai, I mean, I'm Indian. I've had a lot of Indian food over the years growing up. The food and the masala chai, such money. You can watch more about that right up here.
Most Indian doctors move either to the US or to the UK if they decide to move abroad for their further training. So there I was at the crossroads. Should I go to the US or to the UK?
I'm not sure on this, but I would guess the US is probably a lot more competitive because of the compensation. And you see a lot of UK doctors also coming to the US. You don't see it as frequently the other way around or as much effort, and you don't see it being as difficult of a process for those who do. I'm not sure. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that Indian doctors going to the US is probably more competitive than Indian doctors going to the UK.
You know that feeling when you're in a candy store and you just want to taste everything? That was sort of me with medical specialties. I liked both medical and surgical specialties, and I just wasn't ready to tie a knot with one specific specialty. Now the US, while charming, it is like that strict parent that says you only have these many options to choose from, just so pick one of these. That didn't suit me at all.
What he means by that is after you get your MD in the US, you start residency, and when you are starting residency, generally speaking, you are choosing your specialty and either definitively that specialty or a range of specialties. Meaning that if you want to do surgery, you're going to choose either general surgery, 5-year residency, after which, I mean, some are like 7 years with research years, but after that residency, you can do fellowship in certain things like trauma or colorectal, etc., etc. But not everything, because if you want to do orthopedic surgery or neurosurgery, you can't do that after gen surg. You do that right after med school. With internal medicine, non-surgical specialty, then after IM, you can be a hospitalist, primary care doctor, or you can do cardiology, gastroenterology, nephrology, rheumatology, and the list goes on. But once you make that first step, you're now determining what are you doing in the future. So you've already narrowed down your options, even if you do have some flexibility within that option.
Even though I had worked in most specialties during my internship, as an intern, your responsibilities and the things you can do is quite limited. So it's quite difficult to assess whether you really like that specialty.
Oh man, this is gonna be a spicy one. I remember when I made a video about loving plastic surgery and leaving it and talking about like the flow states. And it's like, hey man, if you're not the strongest student, the most skilled or most competent or most confidence inspiring in your seniors, yeah, they're not gonna let you do shit. You're just gonna be retracting as a fucking intern. I was closing as a med student, right? So keep in mind that the amount that you can do is gonna vary based on your level of competence and how much you apply your skill set and try to improve and make your seniors feel confident in you.
I specifically wanted to work in surgery and see if I liked it enough to get into training. So I did 8 to 9 months of colorectal and general surgery. And I also did 9 months of emergency medicine, because these are like 2 things that I sort of really liked during my internship. And I wanted to see if I liked it enough to get into training, especially considering these specialties can be quite busy and quite hectic, and the work-life balance doesn't really exist. And when it does, it's not as great as with other specialties.
So now I'm curious, is it just because ignorance is bliss and we don't know better in the US? Because I feel like a lot of us, just based on our 3rd-year rotations, which is the 1 year in med school where you're trying every single specialty in the hospital or clinic, that usually gives us a good idea as to what we like and don't like. So I knew after that, I was like, OB-GYN, not for me. Pediatrics, not for me. Okay, I do like surgery. Okay, I do like these subspecialties within surgery, right? And you're spending a couple months on surgery, a couple months on internal medicine. So I wonder why I think a lot of us feel like we generally have a good idea as to what we want to do by the time we apply to residency during our 4th year. But what I'm hearing Ajay say is that from his clinical rotations and before he got his MBBS, it wasn't as clear. So I'm wondering is there a difference in training, or is it just a matter of us in the US not knowing that there's this whole different system where they do have more time to decide as junior doctors?
So being able to try out all these different specialties for a few months or up to a year before you commit many years of your life into training in that specialty was kind of like dating before marrying, and I kind of liked it.
My guy. Commitment, huh?
In the US, however, you can't really do something like this. You have to early on decide what specialty you want. You have to apply for the specialty, do the interviews, match into the specialty, match into residency, start the residency, and only while you're working as a resident, you like actually get to assess whether you like it or not. And a lot of the times it'll be like too late to back out.
I don't fully agree with that because in the US, again, third year, you try out everything. Fourth year, you're on your sub internships. You're essentially acting as close as you can to an intern in order to impress that program that you may want to go to train at as a resident. So fourth year, you're spending months and months. I did multiple months in plastic surgery at different cities and different states, and working as hard as possible, practicing my craft, like my suturing, my knot tying, like everything I can do to impress these people to say, hey, I'm training beyond the level that I am right now. So I'm getting my hands dirty. I'm getting really in there, and I know whether or not this is something that I want to keep doing.
As an IMG, especially as an IMG, if you want to like quit your residency and then apply for some other residency, it's gonna be like extremely difficult, sometimes even impossible to get into specialties, especially if the specialty that you want to get into is competitive.
Yeah, as an IMG, FMG, it's really hard to get into certain specialties in the US. I've seen it happen a few times, and oftentimes it's about connections or something really outstanding with your application. We do actually help a lot of IMGs and FMGs get into US residencies, and we've helped people. I remember one client who wrote a really nice review for us. I think she failed to get into family medicine 3 times, and then she worked with us and she got in that 4th time. And if you're looking for help matching as an IMG or FMG, check out medschoolinsiders.com. We have all those services on our website. And we have an exciting addition to share with you on the website, which is the ultimate pre-med and medical student research course. It is the most thorough and comprehensive research course out there. It is step-by-step, A to Z. If you're a complete beginner, you've never done anything, or even if you're experienced but you want to take it to that next level, these are the exact tactics that me and the other course co-creators, that's Dr. Sean Anderson and Dr. Dipal Patel, we've each used to get over 65 research items alone, and research has consistently been one of the highlights and strong points of our applications. So if you want to elevate your research game as well and truly impress the admissions committees for both medical school and for residency, then check out the link in the description below. Use the coupon code UK versus US for 20% off your purchase for a limited time at medschoolinsiders.com/research course.
Again, there might be a way to do this, work for a bit in different specialties, but I am not aware of something like that, and I'm pretty much sure that it's not an easy thing to do. Also, what specialties I could get into in the US as an international medical graduate was super restrictive. You could get into internal medicine, you could get into pediatrics, you can get into probably psychiatry, but that's pretty much it. If I want to do like orthopedics or radiology or dermatology, tough luck. It's almost impossible for an IMG to get in. I mean, there are people who have done it, but that takes like years of research work or other things to be able to get in there, and do you want to do all that?
Yeah. So as I was alluding to earlier in the video, I do think a big part of it is just how competitive it is to get into the US as an IMG or FMG. We use IMG as those who are from the US, did med school overseas and are coming back, and we use FMG for those who are born, raised, did their training, med school, outside, sometimes even more than med school outside, and then want to come to the US. So yeah, it is very restrictive in terms of specialties, and as I was suspecting earlier in the video, I think that is a big part of the consideration because it's a lot harder to get into those specialties. And again, we've seen it done. We've actually helped many people do so for things like plastics, orthopedic surgery, dermatology, a few other specialties. But in order to do that, the odds are against you, but it is possible if you play your cards right.
Funnily, the UK used to be even more restrictive till 2019. There was a set of rules called RLMT, but basically what it meant is that a lot of non-EU and non-UK doctors couldn't get into most good training programs. But thankfully, since Brexit, this scheme has been scrapped. So right now, IMGs are at the same level as UK grads and European grads. So pretty much every specialty has opened up to IMGs, and if you really want to get something, you can get it. Like even compared to India, the UK is a more accessible system right now.
That's a big deal. If you are undecided on a specialty and you might want to go into something that is very competitive, very restrictive, then that's a huge game changer, right?
Money is not everything, but it is something. And here's the tea. The UK doesn't really pay great salaries for the doctors. But if you compare to the US resident salaries, we come out shining, smiling, a bit brighter.
I don't really agree with that. In the UK, we did a video on this recently, and I think the UK doctors, I guess it depends on cost of living and such too, but they're not terribly apart. Like if you're making 50, 60, 70K as a resident, I understand that can be a meaningful change in terms of those years, right? Making 50K versus 70K, but it's not an insane massive change. And it's also only a few years of training such that, I mean, when you're attending in the US, you also make a lot more. So don't agree with that point.
Plus, there are plenty of locum shifts available, which pay much more than regular shifts when you need some money or when you want to do that spontaneous trip to Portugal.
In the US too, you can do locums in certain specialties. Certain specialties will not allow it, but in things like emergency medicine and some other specialties, it's actually quite common.
Now, pay as a residence in the UK is slightly better compared to the US residents, and that's mainly because the US residents work much longer hours per week than UK residents do.
US residents do get worked a lot. I see what he's saying. Essentially, we get paid less per hour because we spend so many more hours in the hospital. In the UK, they do have better restrictions on work hours, and they do work much fewer hours than those in the US. It's still not ideal there, but something to keep in mind.
There's a Dr. Mike video on the internet somewhere where he says residents in the US work for effectively less than minimum wage, considering like the number of hours they work and the salary, which is fixed.
It really depends on the specialty. Like I think Dr. Mike went into family medicine, like you're not pushing 80 hours a week in family medicine, but yeah, if you go into like neurosurgery, which is probably the most challenging in terms of lifestyle in residency, yeah, the number of hours you're putting in, you're exceeding 80 hours per week. And when you do the math on that, you're making less than minimum wage.
In the UK, things are a bit more sensible. So here, the number of hours you work is sort of fixed around 40 hours per week. And if for whatever reason you have to work more than that, you will get paid for the extra hours you do, because here you're paid based on the number of hours you work rather than, one flat pay for your entire year.
Sweet gig. Yeah, we're just paid a flat salary in the US, regardless of whether you're that neurosurgery resident putting in 100-hour weeks or you're in anesthesia putting in 50-hour weeks.
But if you look at the US side, at the end of the day, as an attending, as a consultant in the US, you make 2 to 3 times the salary that you make as an NHS consultant. That is probably the reason why residents in the US are okay with getting a lower salary.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, you're making more at the end. You're making a lot more at the end.
Now, don't get me wrong. Every doctor's journey is tough, no matter where they are, anywhere in the world. But the USMLE felt like climbing the Everest. The USMLE is essentially the medical school board exams for medical students in the US.
United States Medical Licensing Examination, steps 1, 2, and 3. The other thing about the USMLE is that your specialty options are largely dictated by your performance on step 2 now, because step 1 is pass-fail. And especially if you're an IMG, FMG, having, even for those in the US, but even more so for IMGs and FMGs, really standing out with a stellar step 2 score is gonna help a lot in getting that desirable residency position.
Who likes to be put in a box? Not me. So like I said, I worked in different specialties, like I did surgery, I did emergency medicine. The thing in the UK is like you can easily switch from one specialty to another. It's like being in a medical playground.
Medical playground, I love that. Keep in mind, UK, US, different training systems, and in the UK, when you work as a junior doctor, it's essentially a cross between your 4th year of med school and intern year, which also brings up a whole nother point, which we can probably dive deeper into in a different video. But like honesty, especially when we're on social media or other platforms that get a lot of views, like being honest about our level of training. If you're a former junior doctor, not going around saying, oh yeah, I used to like be a doctor. Like I love Peter Attia, as you guys have seen from many of my videos. And maybe it was like a different time or something, but on his TED Talk, there was like a little about thing. It was like, oh, Peter Attia is a former surgical oncologist, and it's like, no. That'd be like me going around saying, yeah, I was practicing as a plastic surgeon. Topic for another video, maybe.
Alright, confession time. I've got a bit of the wanderlust bug, and UK is like the perfect place for me. Super quick and super cheap flights to Europe, and even in the UK, traveling is amazing. It's so beautiful, like the rolling hills, beautiful countryside, endless cup of tea. Honestly, traveling to Europe is so cheap and so easy. Like my flight ticket to Dublin was cheaper than the train from London Liverpool Street to Stansted, which is like a 50-minute, 1-hour journey. Also, London has like 6 major airports, like 6 huge airports in one city. That's how well connected London is. And there you have it, my love letter to the UK and the reasons behind my big move. But look, I am someone who doesn't like to be restricted to one place or one sort of thing. I am still at a point in life where I'm exploring different things, especially with my career. And it might so happen that I might decide to, go to the US someday and, do residency there or work there in some way. So I hope you don't take this video as me telling you why you should choose the UK. This was just a video about what made me choose the UK, what made me come to the UK. And if you choose to come to the UK, stay tuned for more adventures.
Yeah, what I'm getting from this video from Ajay, I appreciate this is a great explanation and this thought process and all the steps he went through. What I'm getting from this is that most people in India probably do want to go to the US, and a lot of people from the UK also want to come to the US because lifestyle here when you're a fully trained physician is better in terms of the compensation, right? And as much as we like to pretend that money doesn't matter, it does matter. It shouldn't be your number one thing, but it does matter. And what I'm hearing here is because of how competitive it is, how he wasn't able to choose a specialty for residency, and how if he wanted to do certain specialties, he was just barred from them just based on how competitive it was, and the fact he was unwilling to do the extra research years and grind a little bit harder for however much time to make himself more competitive. That, I think, it seems to me like those were the primary reasons, and then some other things were minor and secondary reasons. But hey, let me know what you think down below with a comment. What do you agree with, disagree with? Much love, my friends. See you in the next one.